house of Sterling and Associates was a cathedral of glass and steel, a place where emotions were generally considered inefficient overhead. For Elena, a senior architectural designer, the office was a sanctuary of precision and logic. For Marcus, the lead structural engineer, it was a playground of physics and puzzles. They had worked on the same floor for 3 years, their relationship defined by the professional friction of their roles. Elena's designs were often described as ethereal and defying gravity, to which Marcus would inevitably reply with a dry, "Gravity is quite insistent, Elena." The blueprint of friction. The conflict was always the same. Elena wanted the impossible, and Marcus had to make it stand up. They spent their days in high, selenged conference room, hunched over blueprints that smelled of ozone and fresh ink. The cantilever on the north face is 3 meters too long, Elena, Marcus said one rainy Tuesday, tapping his pen against the digital tablet. "Unless you've discovered a new form of reinforced concrete that weighs nothing, it's going to sag." Elena pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, her eyes flashing. "The sag is where the light lives, Marcus. If we shorten it, we lose the morning sun in the atrium. We lose the soul of the building." Marcus looked from the screen to her. He saw the way a stray lock of dark hair had escaped her bun, mirroring the sweeping curves of the very building they were debating. He felt the familiar pull of irritation mixed with something far more dangerous, admiration. "I can give you the sun," he murmured, his voice softening, "but I can't give you a building that collapses in 10 years. "Then find a way to hold it up," she challenged, leaning in. "That's why you're the best in it." The midnight deadline. The tension shifted during the Project Zenith bid. It was a massive urban redevelopment contract that required both of them to practically move into the office for 3 weeks. The city outside turned into a blur of neon and rain, but inside, the world narrowed down to the glow of 12 monitors and the rhythmic hum of the HVAC system. By the second week, the professional barriers began to erode under the weight of sheer exhaustion. At 2 a.m. on a Friday, they were the only 2 left. The cleaning crews had already passed through, leaving the scent of lemon polish in their wake. Elena was slumped over her desk, her forehead resting on the keyboard. Marcus walked over, carrying 2 steaming cups of terrible vending machine coffee that had become their primary fuel. "Break," Marcus commanded gently, setting a cup near her hand. Elena sat up, her face edged with fatigue. "I think I've forgotten what my apartment looks like. Does it have a kitchen? I can't remember." Marcus sat on the edge of her desk, a move that felt incredibly intimate in the hollow silence of the office. "It's a sacrifice for the soul of the building, right?" She took a sip of the coffee and grimaced. "This is industrial solvent. Only the best for Sterling's finest," he joked. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the rain streak against the floor-to-ceiling windows. For the first time in years, they weren't talking about load-bearing walls or aesthetic integrity. "Why do you become an engineer, Marcus?" she said softly. "You're so precise, so guarded." Marcus looked out at the city skyline, the lights of the bridges reflecting in his eyes. My father was a carpenter. He built things that lasted: tables, chairs, small houses. He used to say that a well-built thing is a form of truth. I wanted to build truths on a larger scale. He turned back to her. And you? Why the defying gravity obsession? Elena smiled, a genuine tired expression that reached the eyes. My mother was a dancer. She lived for the moments where she seemed to hang in the air, weightless. I can't dance, so I can try to make the stone and glass do it instead. In that moment, the blueprints on the desk between them didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. They felt like a conversation. The structural shift, the change in their dynamic was subtle at first. Marcus started bringing in better coffee from the bakery down the street. Elena started listening, really listening, when he talked about the limitation of steel tension. They began to work in a rhythmic syncopation. Elena would sketch a curve and Marcus would find the hidden pillar to support it. It was no longer about winning an argument. It was about building a dream together. The Zenith presentation was a triumph. When the board finally approved the design, the office erupted in cheers. In the middle of the celebration, amidst the popping of the cheap champagne corks, Marcus and Elena found themselves standing in the center of the room. "We did it," she whispered, her face glowing with a mix of relief and pride. "You did it," Marcus corrected. "I just made sure it wouldn't fall down." And Elena reached out and took his hand with fingers interlacing with his. It was a small gesture, almost lost in the crowd, but it felt like the most solid structure Marcus had ever encountered. "No," she said firmly, "we did it." The unspoken foundation. The transition from colleagues to something more happened without a formal blueprint. It was a dinner that turned into a 4-hour conversation. It was a walk through the park where they triggered the structural integrity of the gazebos. It was the realization that the office didn't feel right unless the other person was there. But work-life balance is a fragile thing, especially when both people are obsessed with the same work. A month after the bid, a crisis hit a different project. A supplier had sent substandard materials, and the blame game started. The firm was on the edge, and the pressure was immense. Marcus was stressed, his usual calm replaced by a sharp defensive edge. Elena was struggling with a design block. Her creativity shifted by the toxic atmosphere in office. They met in their usual conference room, but the air was thick with unspoken tension. "The structural reports are a mess, Elena," Marcus snapped, tossing a folder onto the table. "I don't have time to hold your hand through the revisions today." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena recoiled, her face turning pale. "Hold my hand. Is that what you think you've been doing?" Marcus rubbed his eyes, realizing his mistake the second the words left his mouth, but the stress was a runaway train. "I just mean I'm underwater. I can't be your safety net every time you want to try something experimental." "I never asked for a safety net," Elena said, her voice trembling. "I asked for a partner." She gathered her things and walked out, the heavy glass door clinking shut with a finality that echoed through the empty hallway. the reconstruction. For 3 days they existed in the state of professional Cold War. They communicated through emails, terse, one-sentence directives that stripped away the warmth they had built. The office felt like a steel and glass cage it had once been. Alina sat in her apartment, looking at the small model of the Zenith atrium. Without Marcus's input, it looked beautiful but fragile. She realized that his limitations weren't just a cage for her creativity. They were the foundation that allowed it to exist. At the same time, Marcus was staring at a set of calculations. They were perfect, logically sound, and utterly lifeless. He realized that without Alina's defiance, he was just building boxes. He didn't send an email. He didn't wait for a meeting. He walked to her desk at 5:30 p.m. just as she was preparing to leave. The office was thinning out. He stood there, holding a small crumpled piece of paper. "What is that?" Alina asked, her voice guarded. He handed it to her. It was a hand-drawn sketch of a small bridge, not a modern one of steel, but a simple stone arch. Beneath it, in his precise engineer script, he had written, "A bridge is only strong because of the tension between its two sides. Without the pull, it collapses." Alina looked up, her eyes misty. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice raw. "I let the stress make me forget that the friction is what makes us work. You push me to the edge of what's possible, and I keep us grounded. I don't want to build anything without you." Alina stood up, stepping around her desk. She didn't care about the HR policies or the eyes of the remaining colleagues. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "I can't dance on my own, Marcus," she whispered. "I need someone to catch me." The final structure. A year later, they stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Project Zenith. The atrium was a masterpiece of light and air, a massive cantilevered wing of glass that seemed to float above the city. As the sun hit the glass, the light flooded the space exactly as Alina had envisioned. And beneath the beauty, invisible to the public but known to her, was the intricate, elegant trusses Marcus had designed to hold the dream aloft. They stood at the very edge of the balcony, looking out at the city they had helped reshape. "It's beautiful," Alina said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's structurally sound," Marcus teased, though he was smiling. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, its band designed like two intertwining strands of different metals, one polished and bright, and the other one was matte and strong. "Alina," he said, his voice steady. "For the first time in weeks, I've spent my life studying how things stay together. I know about load-bearing capacities, stress points, and foundations. And I know with absolute mathematical certainty that my life only works if you're in the center of it." He didn't ask her to defy gravity. He asked her to build a life with him. "Yes," she whispered, the word carried through the atrium like a breeze. In the middle of the glass steel cathedral, where they had once argued over blueprints and coffee, they found the one thing that no engineer could calculate and no architect could draw. A love that was finally and truly built to last. The end. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more stories and to also suggest what story you would love to hear next. Have a lovely day. Stay safe. See you until next time. Bye bye, my fancies.